Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the authentication process for the Coinbase API. And in the previous video, I showed you guys how to generate your API key and your private key. Now, what we're going to do with those keys is save them in an RDS file. So I have an example here from lines 8 to 13. So if we uncomment this, you would paste your API key and your private key here. In addition to those, we're going to store our JWT token and the expiration time, which according to the documentation is about 2 minutes, but it was a little unclear. So we're just going to go ahead and add the expiration time there. Once you save that in the RDS file, you can delete these lines as we're just going to be working with the actual RDS file. We're going to create a new environment and store in our bearer token so we can easily access it with any request. Now to generate a new bearer token, we need to pass in our API key, our private key, and the URI, which consists of the method, whether we're doing a get, post, or delete request, and the actual endpoint. So if we open up this function here, we're going to read in our tokens from the RDS file. We're going to build our URI using the method and the endpoint. Now it did take me a while to get this to work, so throughout the function you'll see many warnings or code to help me debug, but essentially if you store your private key and your API key correctly and have the correct endpoints and the method to use, this should run smoothly. So we're going to start off by parsing our private key, returning a public key. Once we have that, we're going to return our current time. We're going to generate a nonce, build our JWT header, and we need to pass that into this JWT claim function, which you see is commented out. But the issue with that function was that it was returning the initial timestamp. When I removed it from the actual payload, I would get an error when I used the JWT encode. So what I did was copy that function and built my own in line 87, and essentially it's the same thing. All we're doing is just removing that initial timestamp that would trigger an error. So now that we have our new function, we're going to use that by passing in our public key, the issuer, which is CDP, NBF, which stands for not before, which is the current timestamp, and the expiration time, which is 2 minutes from the start time. Now if the URI is provided, we're also going to add that into our payload. Then we can go ahead and generate our bearer token, which is done in line 105. So we're going to pass in our payload, our private key, and our header. Once we have generated our bearer token, we're going to store our bearer token and the expiration time in CP tokens, and we're going to assign our token that we just generated into that private environment, which we can access throughout the script for any of our requests. So we can go ahead and minimize this function, and as an example, just to check that things are working properly, we're going to go over hitting a quote. For this function, we're going to go ahead and pass in the IDs or the cryptocurrencies that we want to get a quote for. We're going to read in our RDS file. We're going to go ahead and construct our URL and endpoint. The base URL for all of our requests, which will be this one here in line 654. The endpoint is best bid ask, and the method for this request is get. Now we can go ahead and use our build JWT function by passing in our API key, our private key, the method, and endpoint. This will generate a new bearer token, which is stored in our private environment, and we can go ahead and access that after we run line 659. Now to create the request, we need to pass in our base URL, the endpoint, construct our headers, adding in the request method, and in case the user entered more than one product ID, it'll go ahead and construct that for us in line 677. We're going to go ahead and perform our request. We're going to close all connections, and we're going to use the response and see if we got a status code of 200. If it did, we're going to go ahead and extract the content, do a bit of formatting, and returning that as a data frame. Otherwise, it'll return null. So let's go ahead and test out this function to make sure that both our requests to get the quote and our bearer tokens are returning properly. So I'm just going to go ahead and save it, and in a new script, I'm going to be sourcing in all of my functions. From this previous script, we're going to get a quote for Bitcoin, and we're also going to test to make sure that we can pass in multiple cryptocurrencies to extract quotes. So let's go ahead and run both of these lines. And if we take a look at BTC, it returned properly, giving us the bid price and size, the mark along with the ask price and size, and the current timestamp. And if we take a look at all, it did in fact return all 3 cryptocurrencies. So this is the way you can test to make sure that you've built both of these functions correctly. But with that guys, this concludes the video. I'll leave a link down in the description area to my Patreon where you can find the script. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.